WHO pre-qualifies the first vaccine against mpox. European Muslim countries eyeing schedule for Palestinian statehood. Hello and good afternoon and salam Malaysia Madani. Thanks for joining us. I'm Otto Othman and you're watching World Today. Yang di-Pertuan Agong, His Majesty Sultan Ibrahim and Raja Permaisuri Agong, Her Majesty Raja Sari Sofia, graced the trooping of the colours ceremony held at Dataran Pahlawan Negara today. Their Majesties arrived at 8:30 a.m. to accompaniment of the Negara coup, followed by a fly-past formation of 5 Malaysian Armed Forces ATM helicopters. The helicopters carried the Jalur Gemilang and the flags of the ATM, Malaysian Army, Royal Malaysian Navy RMN and Royal Malaysian Air Force RMAF, followed by a 21-gun salute. Sultan Ibrahim then inspected the parade, consisting of 25 officers and 503 personnel of all ranks from all 3 branches of the ATM. After the inspection, the ATM Central Band set the stage for the ceremonial march of the 5 colours of the King in full military honours. The 5 colours paraded were of the Royal Malay Regiment, Royal Ranger Regiment, Royal Armoured Corps, and RMN and RMAF. The colours are a national honour bestowed by the King upon regiments or corps from the Army, Navy, and Air Force. The ceremony concluded with 3 shouts of Daulat Tuanku by the parade participants and a prayer. This ceremony marks the last of 6 events scheduled in conjunction with the official birthday of the King on the 3rd of June. The Mahkota state by-election on 28 September will feature a straight fight between candidates from Barisan Nasional and Perikatan Nasional. Returning officer Azurawati Wahid announced the 2 candidates after the nomination process at Dewan Tunku Ibrahim Ismail concluded at 10 a.m. BN has nominated Kluang UMNO Youth Chief Syed Hussein Syed Abdullah to defend the seat won during the previous state election, while PN is fielding former Johor footballer Muhammad Haizan Jaafar. Syed Hussein submitted his nomination form at 9 a.m., followed shortly by Muhammad Haizan 5 minutes later. The Mahkota state by-election is being held following the death of its incumbent, Dato' Sharifah Aziza Said Zain, on 2nd August. The World Health Organization has, for the first time, pre-qualified an mpox vaccine, a move expected to speed up access to the jabs to fight an epidemic raging in Africa. The WHO pre-qualification of the MVA-BN vaccine will help accelerate ongoing procurement of the mpox vaccines by governments and international agencies. WHO said it had based its pre-qualification assessment on information submitted by the manufacturer of the MVA-BN vaccine, Bavarian Nordic, and review of the European Medicines Agency. WHO Chief Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said this first pre-qualification of a vaccine against mpox is an important step in the fight against the disease, both in the context of the current outbreaks in Africa and in the future. He added there is a need for urgent scale-up in procurement, donations and rollout to ensure equitable access to vaccines where they are needed the most to prevent infections, stop transmission and save lives. WHO's pre-qualification listing is used to evaluate the quality, safety and efficiency of medical products such as vaccines, paving the way for the United Nations and other international agencies to procure them. Spain, hosting a high-level meeting of several Muslim and European countries on ways to end the Gaza war, called for a clear schedule for the international community to implement a 2-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Spanish Foreign Minister José Manuel Abreras said the implementation of the 2-state solution is the only way to ensure a just and lasting peace in the region.
Hoy es necesario una acción firme de la comunidad internacional contra aquellos que de uno y otro lado buscan dinamitar la solución de los estados, perpetuar el conflicto y extender la violencia.
In attendance were his counterparts, including from Norway and Slovenia, European Union Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell, Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Mustafa, and members of the Arab Islamic Contact Group for Gaza, that includes Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Jordan, Indonesia, Nigeria, and Turkey. Albaraz said there was a clear willingness among the participants to move on from words to actions and to make strides towards a clear schedule for the effective implementation of a two-state solution, starting with Palestine joining the United Nations. A total of 146 of the 193 member states of the United Nations currently recognize Palestinian statehood. Meanwhile, at least 19 people are killed in Israeli attacks throughout the Gaza Strip, including 5 members of the same family in Al-Awasi, a safe zone repeatedly targeted by Israel. UN Chief Antonio Guterres reiterated that the U.S. must pressure Israel to end its devastating war on Gaza, but admits that he knows that the American political life sufficiently to know this will not happen. International condemnation continues over Israel's attack that killed 18 people at a UN-run school, including 6 UNRWA aid workers. The UN says the facility was used as a polio vaccination center. The UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees later called it the highest death toll among its team in a single incident. Guterres branded the strike, quote-unquote, totally unacceptable, where women and children were also among the 18 dead. EU Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell said he was, quote-unquote, outraged by the deaths and that the strikes showed a disregard of basic principles of international humanitarian law. Across Gaza, many school buildings have been repurposed to shelter displaced families, with the vast majority of territory's 2.4 million people repeatedly uprooted by the war. UNRWA said one of its employees was also killed during an Israeli operation in the occupied West Bank, where raids have escalated since last month. The United Nations agency, UNRWA, said the employee was its first to be killed in the Palestinian territory in more than a decade. But he is among dozens of Palestinians killed during the large-scale Israeli operation, which began days ago and is ongoing, with several more Palestinians dead since Wednesday. UNRWA identified the employee as Sofian Jaber Abed Jawad, who worked as a sanitation laborer. It said he was shot and killed on the roof of his home by a sniper in Farah refugee camp. Jawad's death is in addition to those of 6 other UNRWA staffers that were killed in the Gaza Strip on Wednesday during a strike on a school-turned-shelter. UNRWA has more than 30,000 employees in the Palestinian territories and elsewhere. Violence in the West Bank had already soared alongside the nearly 12-month-old war in the Gaza Strip, but in late August, Israel began its large-scale raids. The United Nations Human Rights Chief said this week that major Israeli operations in the West Bank are sometimes occurring at a scale not witnessed in the last 2 decades. Russia's UN Ambassador Vasily Nebensia told the United Nations Security Council that if Western countries allow Ukraine to conduct long-range strikes in Russia, then NATO countries would be conducting direct war with Russia. Nebensia reminded the Council that it is a direct party of hostilities against a nuclear power, and the members should remember that. Before this, Russian President Vladimir Putin has warned that the West would be directly fighting with Russia if it allows Ukraine to strike Russian territory with Western-made long-range missiles, a move he said would trigger a global conflict. Kyiv has been pleading with its allies to lift restrictions and allow it to strike what it calls legitimate military targets deep in Russian territory. Coming up, 3 U.S. citizens sentenced to death in Congo over role in failed coup. India's Supreme Court has granted bail to opposition leader and Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal in a graft case, paving the way for his release almost 6 months after he was arrested. Ordering Kejriwal's release, Justice Surya Kant said that the issue related to liberty and prolonged incarceration could not be justified. Kejriwal was first taken into custody in March by India's Financial Crime Fighting Agency, weeks before the country's national elections, in relation to alleged irregularities in the capital city's liquor policy. Although he was granted bail in that case in July, he remained in detention due to his arrest a month previously by the federal police in a graft case related to the same policy. Kejriwal and his Aam Aadmi Party deny the allegations and say the cases are politically motivated. 3 U.S. citizens are among 37 defendants sentenced to death by a military court on Friday for their role in a failed coup in Democratic Republic of Congo in May. The 3 accused, Marcel Malanga, Tyler Thompson, and Benjamin Zalman Polun, were found guilty of criminal conspiracy, terrorism, and other charges, and sentenced to death in a ruling read on live TV. The verdict was read out under a tent in the yard of Dolo military prison on the outskirts of Kinshasa. The defendants were seated in front of the judge, wearing blue and yellow prison-issued tops. Armed men briefly occupied an office of the presidency in the capital, Kinshasa, on 19th May before their leader, U.S.-based Congolese politician Christian Malanga, was killed by security forces. His son, Marcel Malanga, was among the Americans on trial, along with Marcel's friend, Thompson, who played high school football with him in Utah. The third American, Zalman Polun, was a business associate of Christian Malanga. The Americans are among some 50 people, including U.S., British, Canadian, Belgian, and Congolese citizens, standing trial following the failed coup. A total of 37 defendants were sentenced to death. The director of Ecuador's biggest prison was killed in an armed attack on Thursday, the second such killing in under 2 weeks in the Latin American country. The SNAI prison agency said Maria Daniela Icaza, director of the infamous Littoral Penitentiary in the port city of Guayaquil, died of injuries sustained, quote-unquote, following an armed attack on the road leading to the nearby town of Daule. The agency said Maria died while being taken to hospital, adding that an official from the prison service who was traveling with her was injured in the incident. Ecuador's prisons are among the most dangerous in the world, and many have been taken over by drug gangs. The penitentiaries have been under military control since January, when President Daniel Noboa declared a state of internal armed conflict after a brutal wave of violence sparked by the jailbreak of a powerful crime boss. Casa's death comes 9 days after the head of a prison in Amazonian province of Sucumbios, Alex Guevara, was killed also in an armed attack while traveling by car. 2 other workers who were with him were wounded after unknown assailants raked his vehicle with gunfire. Indonesia's President-elect Prabowo Subianto met with Vietnamese President and Party Chief Top Lam in Hanoi yesterday as part of a 2-day visit. Subianto said Vietnam and Indonesia had agreed to elevate their ties to a comprehensive strategic partnership. He expected to meet Vietnamese Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh today. At the meeting with President Lam, Subianto expressed Indonesia's condolences for the destruction from Super Typhoon Yagi, which left hundreds of people dead or missing. The President-elect of Indonesia also conveyed his wish to continue to work with Vietnam on matters regarding the South China Sea and further enhance the relationship once taking office in October 20th. China's top legislative body have approved a proposal to raise the country's retirement age, accelerating an overhaul of decades-old laws to tackle the economic pressure of a shrinking workforce. China's retirement ages are currently amongst the lowest globally. Reform is urgent, with life expectancy in China having risen to 78 years as of 2021, from about 44 years in 1960. And projected to exceed 80 years by 2050. At the same time, the working population needed to support the elderly is shrinking. The retirement age will be raised for men to 63 years old from 60, while for women in white-collar work, it would be raised to 58 years from 55. For women in blue-collar work, it will be increased to 55 from 50. The changes are set to come into force on January 1st next year and would be implemented over a 15-year period. Minister of Human Resources and Social Security Wang Xiaoping said it would be done on a flexible and voluntary basis, whereby an employee can choose to retire early or extend retirement for a period of up to 3 years. Having people work for a longer time would ease pressure on pension budgets, with many Chinese provinces already reeling from large deficits. 24-hour strike by aeronautical workers in Argentina over salary disputes with the government resulted in the cancellation of 319 flights, impacting more than 37,000 passengers. State airline Aerolíneas Argentinas, the flagship carrier that employs the unionized workers, said the strike called by the APLA Pilots Union would cost the company around $2.5 million. The strike began yesterday and left hundreds of passengers stranded and lined up at customer service counters at Jorge Newbery Airport. The workers are demanding for better pay rises to adjust to the 264% annual inflation rate, which is the highest worldwide. President Javier Milei has announced plans to privatize the state-run airlines Argentina's airline as part of his adjustment pact to tackle inflation and state deficit. Blue-collar workers from Boeing walked picket lines in the Pacific Northwest instead of building airplanes on Friday after they overwhelmingly rejected a proposed contract that would have raised their wages by 25% over 4 years. The strike by 33,000 machinists will not disrupt airline flights anytime soon, but it is expected to shut down production of Boeing best-selling jetliners. They were joined by workers from across the United States who produce the MAX and other jets. This comes after rejecting a contract deal due to demands for higher pay. The strike is creating more uncertainty and concern for suppliers of parts and components for programs like the 737 MAX. Many were already having difficulty planning production due to Boeing's repeated changes to internal forecasts for suppliers. Up next in sports, Alcaraz leads Spain into Davis Cup Final 8. Selangor FC enjoyed a goal feast at home by crushing Kuching City FC 4-0 in a Super League action at the Petaling Jaya City Council Stadium MBPJ last night. The first half saw Nizam Jamil's squad showing a high level of urgency in the early minutes of the game in an effort to score early, and the pressure quickly paid off. In the 11th minute, Selangor managed to open the scoring when Ali Olwan's pass to Ronnie Fernandez was intercepted by Kuching City defender Philemon Anye, but his clearance saw the ball bounce into his own goal after hitting Fernandez's chest. Selangor continued to torment the visitors in the second half as Olwan finished off a fine move after receiving a pass from Fernandez in the 67th minute before Umar Eshmurodov put Selangor in a comfortable 3-0 position after bearing Yahandre Orozco's corner kick in the 75th minute. Despite leading by a comfortable margin, Selangor continued to add to the woes of Aidil Shahrin Sahak's squad when Alvin Fortes scored the fourth goal for his team in the 80th minute. The score remained 4-0 until the final whistle, and the result saw Selangor maintain second position in the Super League table with 22 points behind leaders JDT, while Kuching City are in fourth position with 14 points. In tennis, Spain sealed their spot in the Davis Cup Final 8 with wins from Carlos Alcaraz and Roberto Bautista Agut in Valencia. France crashed out of the competition when world number 3, Carlos Alcaraz, beat Hugo Humbert 6-3, 6-3 in the second rubber in Valencia with a convincing display. Earlier, the defeat of Arthur Fels to Roberto Bautista Agut 2-6, 7-5, 6-3 put France 1-love down, and Humbert was unable to revive the French against a solid Alcaraz in front of a home crowd. Since the reform of Davis Cup in 2019, France has never managed to get beyond the group stage. Spain and Australia, with 2 successes each, have booked their ticket for the final 8 in Malaga at the end of November and will compete for the head of this Group B on Sunday. Real Madrid coach Carlo Ancelotti said strikers Kylian Mbappe and Vinicius Jr. were not letting critics weigh them down after an underwhelming start to the season. New arrival Mbappe netted a brace in his last outing for the club, falling 3 La Liga games without a goal, while Vinicius has 1 strike in the opening 4 matches. French superstar Mbappe joined Madrid at the end of his Paris Saint-Germain contract this summer, and Ancelotti is still working out how to get the best from the forward, who, like Vinicius, prefer to drift in from the left. Thus far, Mbappe has started in the middle with Vinicius in his preferred position, but the Brazilian has lacked spark. Real Madrid face Real Sociedad on Saturday in La Liga ahead of their first Champions League match this season against Stuttgart at home on Tuesday. Ancelotti said midfielder Jude Bellingham and Aurélien Tchouaméni would not be ready for the trip to San Sebastian, but could return after that. International Olympic Committee presidential hopefuls, including World Athletics chief Sebastian Coe, face a set of election rules that could influence next year's vote for the new head of the world's biggest multi-sport organization. Britain's former Olympic champion Coe, 67, and Spanish IOC Vice President Juan Antonio Samaranch Jr., the 64-year-old son of the late former IOC chief, are 2 of the potential candidates eyeing the top job in the Olympic body. A letter sent this week by IOC Ethics Commission Chief Ban Ki-moon to all members said the elected IOC president would have to be an IOC member throughout their entire term, while the age limit for IOC membership is 70 even for the top job, with only 1 possibility of a 4-year extension. The first term for an IOC president is 8 years, which means that under current rules, COE and Samaranch, if elected, would exceed the age limit during their first years in office. IOC members are elected either through their positions as heads of international federations and national Olympic committees or as individual members. Other possible hopefuls for the top job include Zimbabwe's Minister for Youth and Sports, Christy Coventry, French Olympic Committee President David Lapartient, and Jordan's Prince Faisal. Up next, Huawei unveils triple folding phone with hefty price tag. The wrecks of explosives-laden Nazi ships sunk in the river Danube during World War II have emerged near Serbia's river port town of Prahovo after a drought in July and August that saw the river's water level drop. 4 vessels dating from before 1950 have also come to light in Hungary's Dunave-Drava National Park near Mocas, where the Dunabe's water level stood at only 1.5 meters on Tuesday. The vessels revealed in Prahovo were among hundreds scuttled along the Dunabe by Nazi Germany's Black Sea Fleet in 1944 as they retreated from advancing Soviet forces, destroying the ships themselves. Strewn across the riverbed, some of the ships still have turrets, command bridges, broken masts, and twisted hulls, while others lie mostly submerged under sandbanks. Dunave-Drava National Park guard Andrei Telink said one of the ships in Hungary is unfortunately diminishing.
De hogy pontosan mi, ezt a mai napig nem tudjuk. Ami látható és sajnálatos tény, akárcsak a többivel kapcsolatosan, hogy hát fogyadozik a terjedelme. Tehát, hogy azért érdekel ez másokat is, és időről időre tűnnek el belőle részek.
The Dunave stood at 1.17 meters in Budapest on Tuesday, which compares with an all-time record low of around 0.4 meters registered in October 2018. During floods, the Dunave rises well above 6 meters. Chinese tech giant Huawei on Tuesday unveiled the world's first triple folding phone at more than 3 times the price of the newest iPhone, hours after its U.S. competitor lifted the curtain on its own new handset built for AI. The Mate XT was officially launched in a keynote presentation by Huawei executive Richard Yu at the firm's headquarters in the southern city of Shenzhen. Originally designed as a premium phone for a niche audience, more than 3 million people registered interest in buying the Mate XT ahead of its launch. The gadget officially goes on sale on 20th September, with prices beginning at an eye-watering $2,800, over 3 times more than the new iPhone 16. Advertised in a sleek red and gold design, the phone can transform into a 26-centimeter tablet and weighs 298 grams.
展开这款手机，大家看到就是一款10.2英寸的全世界最大的最大最轻薄的，相当于一个平板一样的。我希望把我们的平板装在口袋里。今天我们这个实现了。
Its release comes a day after Apple announced its iPhone 16, built for generative artificial intelligence, as it seeks to boost sales and keep up in the technology race. The dream of hurling between European cities at speeds of more than 700 kilometers per hour moved a step closer with the first successful vehicle tests at the European Hyperloop Center. Hovering inside a sleek 420-meter white tunnel, a dark and light gray striped pod levitates at the order from the Mission Control Center, before powering away using magnetic propulsion and with no one on board. For the moment, the speed is relatively slow at 30 kilometers per hour, but operators hope to reach 100 kilometers per hour by the end of the year, as they race towards rolling out a system by 2030. The test launch took place in front of 300 guests, including Prince Constantine of the Netherlands. The next stage is to test under full vacuum conditions and gradually increase the speeds. The European Hyperloop Center is the world's only facility to feature a lane switch, a tunnel breaching off from the main track. Hyperloop hopes to start testing the lane switch soon with vehicles and eventually build a bigger center to enable the pod to reach the dizzying speeds possible. The eventual aim is to replace short-haul European flights and long drives across the continent, with ticket costs probably comparable to a low-cost airline. Well, that concludes today's edition of World Today. In our top story, WHO pre-qualifies the first vaccine against mpox. Till then, I'm Otto Othman, Malaysia Madani, Jiwa Merdeka. Thanks for watching.